CNN, I just remembered President Trump calling them scum. So let's see what CNN has to report on Canadian Prime Minister.
Carney, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
There is clearly Iran that's going to be dominating to a great extent your summit of world leaders, the first time you've all got together since this war in the Middle East. I want to know from your perspective, and you've talked to President Trump, where do you think it is now? Is the war over?
Well, there has been obviously significant developments in recent days and recent hours. The position.
Let's see which way he's gonna play it, because he's a huge Trump supporter. At least when he's outside of Canada, right? Outside of the Canada, it's elbows out or elbows up. When he goes to US or somewhere else, it's more like, yeah, let's bend the knee. So I really wonder what he's gonna say. But I feel like the question is more like for President Trump, not the Canadian Prime Minister, or at least not this Canadian Prime Minister, right?
The position of Iran has been substantially degraded, both with respect to airspace, potentially significantly with respect to their nuclear capabilities or development of their nuclear capabilities. And that's created a window for this ceasefire as we're talking today, as the President Trump has declared a ceasefire. We'll see how it holds. The recent Iranian action, as you know, was consistent with leading up to an actual de-escalation. So, again, as we're here today, it's promising, but much more needs to happen.
What do you make of?
I mean, come on, it's not surprising for anyone. What should Iran do? Should they go all out when the US gets included? Look, they did such a successful military operation. They flew B-2 bombers from Missouri to Iran, dropped the bombs on 3 nuclear facilities at the same time, and then returned back without landing, without any shots fired against the bombers, without losing any lives on the US side, obviously. So, do you really think Iran will choose something else than de-escalate and agree to ceasefire? I'm not saying we're gonna have the lifetime peace, but right now someone's actually smart in the Iran, and they decided that the best move is to calm down for now. I'm not saying it's gonna last long, right? How can you trust someone who has such a close ties with terrorists? But at the same time, looks like they know what's best for them. So I don't think anyone should really be surprised that they agree with ceasefire.
Of the Iranian response. I mean, there was literally everybody on the edge of their seats as to whether this was going to be massive and trigger another massive US retaliation. In the end, it was, in their words, proportional, and in President Trump's words, kind of a weak response. And he actually thanked the Iranians for even giving them all a heads up so they got everybody out of harm's way. You know, there's a lot of noise in that part of the world condemning the violation of, you know, Qatar's airspace and its sovereignty. But really, what do you think is happening diplomatically? What are people thinking about this moment?
I think the military action, I would lean towards President Trump's interpretation of it. The military action was also a diplomatic move by Iran. It was, I mean, we never welcome, obviously, hostilities and reactions, but it was proportionate. It was de-escalatory. It appears to have been previewed, which allowed, and they're Canadian soldiers at the Qatari base as well.
Did you get them out of harm's way?
They were out of harm's way, yes.
So it's par for the course, really.
They were out of harm's way, probably thanks to the Americans. I'm not gonna lie, I don't have any trust in this guy.
And it gives, as far as you're concerned, an opening for diplomacy.
It gives an opening for diplomacy. I think that's the right way to put it. And the question is, does that diplomacy really get traction and move to ending this risk of nuclear proliferation? And does it lead as well to broader a broader ceasefire in the Middle East, including in Gaza?
I'm going to get to
Yeah.
Gaza because I know it's incredibly important to you and to so many people around the world. But just on this issue, President Trump at one point posted about, hey, why not regime change if they can't make this, you know, what did he call it, make Iran great again? Why not change regime? Israel looked like it was really going for regime targets and a lot inside, frankly, densely populated areas.
I mean, to be fair, they pretty much supported regime change a lot. Like, they got rid of so many high generals and high people in the regime, and they killed their replacements as well, right? I think the regime in Iran is at one of the weakest stages they can be, so I feel like the opportunity for revolution is definitely there. And if someone reaches out to Israel and the US, I think they would support the regime change. But right now, the main priority or main goal for President Trump was to make sure that Iran won't get an access to nuclear weapons, and that's what he did. And he did what he promised. He didn't start any new war. He actually made sure that the world will be a peaceful place, right? And it sounds crazy, but yes, making sure that Iran, the country that supports multiple terrorist organizations, won't get an access to nuclear weapons, that's helping to make a world a better, more peaceful place.
Is like the capital, Tehran. And they said to give a space, at least, for people to rise up and take their own destiny into their own hands. Is that something you would have supported? Did you support it? I know you talked to President Trump on the phone during all this.
Well, look, we're not an active participant in this in these hostilities. Maybe that's an obvious point, but I'll just state that to begin with. We very much have had a consistent position over many years that Iran cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons. We see that events are making that much less likely, and that diplomacy taking its course. That's the responsibility of the Iranian regime, as it is. They would serve the Iranian people well, at a minimum, to take the nuclear option off the table for Iran.
Do you see a way, because they insist on having nuclear capacity and certainly civilian nuclear reactors, do you see a way, has anybody informed Canada, yourself, about the way to do that?
Well, I think that the reaction of Iran and some of its partners or allies has revealed that the nefarious nature of much of its nuclear program. I mean, there was a fiction that they perpetrated that this was for only peaceful means.
So you don't believe the intelligence that they had not made a decision to go for a bomb?
Well, they're
60% enriched uranium. You're really gonna start with this rhetorics that, oh, maybe it wasn't for a bomb. Like, that's way over what you need for the nuclear power plant or something like that. It's actually much closer to the nuclear weapon you need. And they had not the powers, they had the resources for 14 nuclear bombs. Really? You want to risk that in a week they're going to come with 14 nukes and they're going to drop it on Israel, US, and whoever disagrees with them? Really, CNN? I don't know why they're trying to push this narrative. It's just so disingenuous.
They were enriching uranium to a degree. They were hiding the facilities, or trying to hide the facilities, over many years, on a path that was not necessary, that was entirely not necessary for civilian.
Yeah, that facility was 300 feet under the ground. Do you really think they were doing something that wasn't shady? Come on.
Use of nuclear technology. So I think the combination of that, the combination of their belligerence, the combination of their state sponsor of terrorism throughout the region, all of that points in one direction. And the reaction to the U.S. action also revealed the intent to create that ability, the Iranian intent to create that ability to have nuclear weapons. Yes,
for sure.
Yeah. I think it's pretty clear, Tenny, just in public domain information and words, including words of the Russian allies.
And how seriously then do you take their desire to go to negotiations to resolve this peacefully? Because that's what they said they thought they were doing when Israel started.
Well, again, we weren't party to the negotiations, but they hadn't. Iran had not proceeded with the final phase of those negotiations prior to this action. We didn't know the Israeli action was going to happen, to be absolutely clear. How likely is it? I mean, this is speculative, but the facts on the ground have changed. The risk calculation.
No. This is ridiculous, and I hate this. If the same thing would happen on the side between Russia and Ukraine, if they were dealing about the ceasefire and Russia start bombing Ukraine, which happened, right? And automatically they were against Russia. They said it's unacceptable and everything. And now Israel does it and everything's okay. Let's give them a benefit of doubt. Well, the ceasefire wasn't in effect yet? Really? What are we talking about? It's ridiculous. So you want to tell me that if Russia and Ukraine start dealing about ceasefire, so within until Russia signs the deal, they can wipe out the whole Ukraine and everything's going to be okay because they were willing to negotiate about ceasefire? Come on, it's acting in a bad faith, and this rhetoric is just so disingenuous again. It's ridiculous.
For the Iranian regime has to have changed. The clarity about what their intentions were on with respect to their nuclear program, I think, has changed. I'm not surprised by that, but it has changed. All of that should point to a resumption of negotiations to denuclearize Iran.
Let's move on to Canada's desire.
I think they were denuclearized by US, pretty much. I don't know how many more facilities they have, if any, and I don't think US would leave any functional, but yeah, I think they were pretty much pushed to it right now.
Because you said a lot, Canada will lead. You want to help lead, form new coalitions. You've said, in fact, if the United States no longer wants to lead, Canada will. Try to build a coalition of like-minded nations with like-minded values, etc., and who believe in international cooperation. What does that look like? And is that something?
Canada is in no position to lead. This gentleman, Mark Carney, is not able to lead Canada. The quality of life, the economy, everything in Canada is going downhill. And you want to put him in charge of NATO or something similar? Really? Just clean your own country first and then you can have ambitions. But no, he's acting like a big shot. And then people are leaving Canada because of the living conditions over here. Really? The Alberta might separate. Saskatchewan might separate. British Columbia might separate because of this leadership. And you want to put him in lead of some organization like NATO? Really?
Something that will trigger President Trump into more anger. He's already got these tariffs, and he's already said, if you guys essentially try to gang up on me, you'll have to pay for it even more dearly.
I think we have to look at this in the way we would like to lead, the way European Union would like to lead, a number of Asian countries as well, is in a positive respect. If the U.S. is pulling back from multilateralism, as it is with respect to trade, these are effectively, U.S. trade policy is now bilateral. If the U.S. is pulling back, there are others of us who do believe in multilateralism. So, as you know, literally I'm coming here in the last 12 hours ago, I was in Brussels agreeing at the Canada-EU summit, agreeing a very comprehensive partnership and a process to have an ever closer economic, defense, and security partnership between Canada and the EU. That is an example of to jurisdictions, in the case of the EU, that believe in multilateralism, believe in the rule of law, believe in fair and open trade, believe in defense cooperation. So that's an example of leadership, if you will, that's positive. It's not it's a reaction, if you will, to what's happening in the United States. But it's not a reaction against the United States. It's for something, not against.
But President Trump tends to be A, transactional, and B, very personal. And sometimes he thinks, or maybe you know differently. Apparently, they say
honestly,
that you're the Trump whisperer of the leaders.
I'm not
and
sure
that
about
you're
that,
on texting, relations with him, and you're constantly talking.
Only CNN, man. What do you mean, Trump whisperer? He agrees with everything President Trump says. He has no power. He's more likely Trump's puppet. And not in a good way. Like, look, I admire President Trump. I think what he does for US is great. But we need someone like that in Canada. Like, President Trump is using Mark Carney to do whatever's best for US. Not whatever's best for Canada, right? Like, we heard all of these elbows up, and that's why Mark Carney got elected. Did we see that? No, we got even more tariffs. The situation got even worse within, 2-3 months with Mark Carney? Who thought it's going to be possible? We thought it's going to get slowly better. And, okay, I'm conservative. I didn't think it's going to get better. But honestly, I didn't expect it's going to get this bad, this fast. Without any major conflict, right? You can make a point that the last 3-4 years were bad because of the Ukraine and Russia war. But what happened in the last 3 months that Canada was included in? Nothing. The only thing that Carney did is promised $4 billion to Ukraine. Again, $4 billion out of taxpayers' money. But the situation in Canada is getting worse and worse, and it's been only 3 months of the new Liberal government that was supposed to make everything better. Guys, Liberals, you just got bamboozled. Just write me in the comment why you did that. I want to know. I'm honest. What made you vote for Liberals? And, well, if you write elbows up, I have a bad news for you.
So, is he still saying he wants to annex Canada?
He's not.
Whoa, wait. He never said he's going to annex Canada. What is this? Oh, CNN, right? But he never said that. What the...
He's not. He admires Canada. I think it's fair to...
Yo, why? Okay, guys. President Trump admires Canada. Yes. For sure. Maybe he liked his visit to Alberta, but that's it. Admires Canada? Really? Are you serious?
To say, and maybe for a period of time coveted Canada, but
you've put that to bed.
Well, look, we're two sovereign nations who are discussing the future of our trade relationships, our defense partnership, which has been very strong in the past. How is that going to evolve?
For discussion, you need two people. So far, it looks like President Trump is accomplishing everything he wants, and you are just nodding for everything he wants. Tell me what good you did for Canadian residents and citizens. Like I said, last 3 months, everything's getting worse and worse. So tell me what you accomplished. Liberals, tell me what your God accomplished, because I don't see anything.
But again, I would say it this way: the president is focused on a series of changing bilateral relations. We're at NATO. He's been focused on making sure that all members, Canada included, of NATO pay their fair share, carry their weight. I think we are now doing that. We've made major investments in defense in recent months. We're now at the NATO 2%. We're committed to accelerating that. We've got this new defense partnership with Europe as another example.
let's be fair. Like President Trump wants 5% of GDP from all of the NATO member, so they invest those 5% into their military and army, right? I don't think that's an unreasonable thing. Also, it's been in the contract for a while right now, so it's not like he wants something out of nothing. Like that was one of the requirements for the members of NATO to actually stay within NATO. And Biden and Obama, they just did not follow it. They didn't push on it. And look, out of nowhere, everyone depends on US to handle their shit, right? Which is not true. I mean, which is not right. And those 5% of GDP, it's not like the member states are sending that to US. No, the member states will use it to strengthen their own military. So in the end, who's going to benefit of it? Canada, European Union states, well, not all of them are members of NATO, right? But it's not like US is going to benefit of it. Yes, indirectly, because not everything's going to depend on US. But it's not like you're going to give 5% of GDP to someone else, comparing to taxpayers' money and Ukraine, right? It's not like Canada collects taxpayers' money and gives that to US. That's only happening with Ukraine for some reason.
That's other countries stepping up. I don't see that is at all. I think that's positive. We're doing it for our own reasons, but I think it's positive for the U.S. relationship, not something that.
But it's pretty sudden and it's pretty overnight. The whole dumping you in the, now we have to take care of our own security, and not only that, we have to help prevent this increasing invasion by a hostile force in Europe, Russia, against a democratic, sovereign, independent state. Suddenly, it's all been landed on your lap. So how realistic is it in a time when you already have economic difficulties, so does Europe and others, to actually, you're at 2%, but now they want 3.5% and eventually 5%. Isn't that just going to cripple your budgets?
It's important. These are important questions, and it's important to be clear what we are potentially, and I think likely to all agree tomorrow, which is, and let's take the 5% of GDP figure, which is a huge chunk. Big number.
How much is it?
I disagree. It's a big number, but we're talking about percentages. So if a country like Czech Republic, if their GDP is going to be significantly smaller than US or Canada, right? So by giving the percentage, I think that's okay. It's not like they're asking for $5 billion to go into the military. They're asking whatever 5% of your GDP is. I think that's fair.
Is it actually for you?
5% of our GDP would be about $150 billion.
I mean, that's a lot.
It's a lot of.
That's a lot
of numbers.
Per year?
Per year.
That's a lot.
Of course, it
so
is
it means
a lot.
that's stuff that you can't give to your own citizens.
Well, okay, but here, let's start to break it down. So,
okay, let's wait. Who's talking about giving something to the citizens? That was never on the table, right? It's either we're gonna give it to citizens of other countries, or we're gonna give it to other politicians, or it's just gonna disappear. Like, come on, let's just break it down, okay? Let's slow down over here.
Part of it, a little less than a third of that overall number is spending on things that, quite frankly, we're already doing to build the resilience of our economy. So it can be domestic resilience. It can be defending in areas that support defense, but also support other things. So I'll give an example. Critical minerals. It is obvious, I think, to everyone now, the risk that's run being fully dependent on China for critical minerals, including rare earths, magnets, and others, not just for defense industry, but for the auto industry and others. Canada has one of the biggest and most varied deposits of critical minerals,
which Trump was coveting.
I think I'm going crazy. So yes, we have critical minerals, but we're gonna keep them in ground. does this person even knows what he's talking about? He's vouching so long for keeping critical minerals in ground, and now he's gonna be like, well, we want to become independent in China. So, like, what? Really, I swear, I'm so bamboozled by what he's saying.
Are going to
Flabbergasted, and I'm using these words because it's just literally like that's Carney for me.
develop those. We're going to develop those in Canadian interests. We're going to develop some of them in partnership with the European Union itself and European Union member states, with the UK, other partners. Some of the spending for that counts towards that 5%. In fact, a lot of it will count towards that 5% because it's infrastructure spending. It's ports and railroads and other ways to get these minerals out. So that's something that benefits the Canadian economy, but is also part of our NATO, our new NATO responsibilities. So I'm not.
Is coal a critical mineral? I mean, still making coal that that he put even more taxes on, even though we're facing tariffs, and he refused to build more mines, and we still have Bill C-69 in effect. I really don't know what this gentleman is talking about. It's like he's talking about these things that looks good in news, like in media, but he has no plan how to make it happen. And you're complaining about President Trump, or you used to complain how he's talking about the stuff and it sounds like sci-fi. There's no way he's gonna make it happen. He has no plan. And look, he did. And now we have this gentleman who apparently people elected because of resume, and he's talking about so many contradictive, whatever the word is, things. It doesn't make sense. You can't do one thing while you keep the thing that's preventing you to do the first thing. It's ridiculous. Like I don't know how to describe it. You can't cut the tree down without cutting the tree down. With the law, let's not cut the tree down. You can't cut the tree down. I mean, you can illegally, right? But that's a different story.
Trying to downplay it. I think the other thing I would say is where we sit today, collectively, we NATO countries are likely to agree to the other component of that 2% going to the 3.5% in 10 years. But the nature of warfare is changing very rapidly. We just look at what's happening in Ukraine. I mean, you don't need an aircraft carrier anymore. Well, some do, but most of us don't. You need drones, and you need the integration of drones with your cyber capabilities, your broader satellite capabilities. We're making a commitment, but we're not locking ourselves in. We're not signing a bunch of post-dated checks for the hardware, military hardware of today to protect our citizens.
Talking about Ukraine, which is the war in Europe.
Here we go.
And the existential war, frankly, as Europeans see it.
Here we go. Now explain why you gave them $4 billion. I mean, again, it's CNN, so it's going to be some bullshit.
Yeah.
And obviously, as Ukraine sees it, you have a massive Ukrainian diaspora in Canada, and the world was incredibly on Ukraine's side for so long. It's almost like now it's an afterthought. President Zelensky was essentially, I'm going to say these words, stood up by President Trump at your G7. I mean, Trump left before he even met Zelensky. I don't know whether he's coming and they're going to meet here. But if the United States walks away, don't you think Russia will win?
No. The short answer, no.
Really?
I don't think,
can you make up for the weapons that...
Well, we can't fully make up, but we can...
This is so ridiculous. Why are you supporting them with money and weapons without telling them you need to negotiate peace? Like, why are you literally telling them we're going to support you until your whole country is wiped out? Because that's what's going to happen. You have Russia that's multiple times bigger than Ukraine. They have multiple more citizens than Ukraine, and you still think that you can just support them and they will somehow win. And let's also talk about what effect it has on the other countries, like on the Canada. $4 billion, instead of returning it back to the taxpayers, you're literally going to steal it from taxpayers and send it to Ukraine without telling Ukraine, hey, you need to deal about the peace, otherwise we're going to stop sending you money. Like, this is so outrageous. And again, I think this is treason. They literally stole money from Canadians and from Canadian residents without any referendum or anything. And Canada is in such a deep shit right now. The quality of living, affordability, price of food, it literally feels like we're at war as well. Okay, this is exaggeration, obviously. But the prices, really? So many Canadians will end up on the street thanks to this tool.
First off, I don't think the U.S. is going to, quote, walk away.
Do you think it'll keep? Do you think Trump will keep giving weapons to Ukraine?
I'll leave that to the U.S. to determine, but there's other measures that can be taken. So first off, have we forgotten about Ukraine? Absolutely not. As you just mentioned, President Zelensky was at the G7. At the G7, Canada announced a major package of new financial sanctions against Russia, major defense support, major support for the Ukraine budget. The European Union is launching its 18th package of sanctions, which will have very significant impacts on the financial sector in Russia.
Oh my God, how can you say 18th package and still believe that it's going to have any effect on Russia? Are you serious?
The US, which is
well,
the
the
most
U.S.,
powerful.
there is a sanction package working its way through the Senate. Lindsey Graham is sponsoring that. And if it is enacted, which is a choice, but it will be a game changer. So the U.S., even without military is hugely important here. It is a war.
Are you going to try to persuade Trump to keep supporting Ukraine
Yes.
militarily?
I mean,
militarily?
Yes, absolutely. Because, look, it is, it's not, yes, we have a diaspora, and it's, of course, that's important, and there's personal ties.
Okay, what's the end game? What's the end game? How do you want to solve this war? Tell us this and then work towards that goal, because right now you guys don't have any goal. Your only goal is to suck all of the taxpayers dry in favor of Ukraine. And again, I'm not saying it's okay what Russia did, but there needs to be some goal. There needs to be something you work towards, that something that's set in stone, not something like, oh, we want justice. No justice. There needs to be end of war. People need to stop dying. You need to work towards that and not being like, oh, we're going to support you as long as you need to. No.
But this is about rule of law. It's about territorial integrity. It's about support for democracy. And it does have those wider implications.
Hold on. Support for democracy. I think President Zelensky's term is over. Where's the election? And I know the argument's going to be like, oh, they're at war, they cannot have election. It's not true. They're doing crazier shit. Like even Zelensky traveling all over the world. Well, hold the election. I don't really think you can talk about a democracy when they have a president whose term is over. They're not trying to work towards the peace, and he's arguing with the war that he's not able to hold election during the war. Like, if you combine these two things, that he's literally trying to keep the war going, and at the same time refusing to hold election, I don't think you can talk about democracy anymore.
It's also, it has real security implications for much of Europe. We are at NATO. We have under Article 5, we have responsibilities to each other. We take those responsibilities seriously. That's why we're here. So there's many, many factors. Personally, I think
We are at NATO. I mean, in NATO. And guess who's not?
Canada, we would start and stop at the human. We don't need all those other responsibilities in order to supplement or to make the case for supporting Ukraine. Perhaps in the United States, a few other jurisdictions, they need all of those elements, but those elements exist. And so, yes, we'll make a very strong case to the president.
I want to circle back to what we started talking about, the Middle East, and what you brought up, which is Gaza. Do you think there is any way that there can be the kind of peace that people are talking about now in the Middle East if there isn't a resolution, first to the Gaza catastrophe, and second, in general, to the Israel-Palestinian crisis? Trying to get a state for the Palestinians that lives in harmony, peace, and security for all, and freedom. How much do you think you're all committed to that? And what will you do? What strikes you as the most important thing to do next?
Well, I think when you have... First, the core question, can there be a lasting peace in the Middle East without peace in Gaza that takes into account Gaza?
Sorry, I don't think there's ever going to be a peace in Gaza. It's been going for years, and no one even knows whose fault is it anymore. We know about Hezbollah and what they did. Obviously, it was horrific. And yes, the terrorist organization needs to get wiped out. Same with Hamas. But look, issue between Israel and Palestine, that's been a lifelong issue. It's not going to get solved. I don't think it will ever get solved, as both of these countries are still following the religion they are. That's just my opinion. But again, it's been going on for what, 40 years now?
West Bank, effectively working on a path to a Palestinian state. You use several adjectives. I would agree with all of those, and living side by side in security with Israel. A Zionist, if you will, Palestinian state that recognizes the right of Israel to exist, not just to exist, but to prosper and not live in fear. Now, we can't have peace.
Yes, that's one thing, right? To acknowledge the Israel, which definitely should get acknowledged. But at the same time, isn't Israel giving like conditions for the Palestinian state? Isn't it kind of like, yes, you can have your own state as long as you follow these conditions, which is ridiculous as well. Like I said, I don't hold my breath. We might have a ceasefire, we might have a peace for a few years, but there's still going to be issues.
Unless we move towards that. Second point, developments as we sit today and the potential trajectory with respect to Iran does create another window for that. In fact, only 9 days ago at the G7, we all agreed, President Trump included, that resolution of the crisis with Iran should be accompanied by a broader reduction of hostilities in the region, including, these are exact words, including a ceasefire in Gaza.
Does that mean that President Trump could use...
I disagree. In my opinion, what's going to happen is that Israel will reach the ceasefire with Iran, and they make it look like, okay, now we're good guys. We solved this one crisis. So maybe we don't have to deal with Palestine right now, deal with this crisis. Just, I don't know. I feel like they're going to use it like one little win just to calm the world down. But the issue between Israel, Palestine, it's still going to be there.
Use his leverage on Israel to actually go to a meaningful plan, which was in the offing before Trump was inaugurated, for the Israeli forces to come out, for an Arab force and internationals to go in and to start a reasonable conversation.
let's start with the basics, given the dire situation there in Gaza, which is the
siege,
the need for a ceasefire now, a full resumption. I know there's some, but a full resumption of humanitarian aid, and then moving forward from that. I'm not jumping all the way to a broader peace plan, and accompanied to this, lest anyone think I'm not acknowledging this, is release of the hostages. And there is the prospect, the possibility of that created again in the current circumstances. So the question is to keep the focus on that and move forward if at all possible.
Mr. Prime Minister, the hostages have not been released except through a ceasefire and negotiations. The last batches of hostages who were released were under those circumstances. In Israel itself, like the former Prime Minister
who accomplished it. You're not going to say the name, right? Whose accomplishment it was. Exactly. President Trump accomplished it. So just write it down, CNN, okay? Let's say whose accomplishment it was and who is working towards that, who is pretty much the first president who's actually trying to deal with anything. And we're talking about NATO, we're talking about Canada. No one did anything. Not even during the Ukraine war. Like, where did we have peace negotiations in those 3 years? No one did anything but President Trump. And of course, CNN's not going to mention it.
Mr. Ehud Olmert, former defense minister Moshe Ya'alon, former, security and intelligence and defense and security establishment are beginning and saying loudly that Israel needs to stop this trajectory in Gaza because it's leading to war crimes. And Olmert said war crimes are being committed. You have said that you strongly oppose the expansion of the operations in Gaza. The level of human suffering is intolerable. Do you believe, like many in the international community, that the siege, preventing food, medicine, water, and all the rest of it, should be prosecuted as war crimes? And I know your police, our Royal Mounted Police, are investigating some aspects of that.
Well, the first... where we're focused is using this opportunity, the extent to which we have influence, using this opportunity, if I can term it that way, and I think it is an opportunity.
He's not going to answer that. He's not going to answer that. He can't say it's a war crime because then President Trump would be against it. But yeah, maybe he will. We'll see. But no, I would be very surprised.
To reestablish the ceasefire in Gaza, reestablish the full resumption of humanitarian aid. We're also focused on stopping the violence in the West Bank and the encroachments in the West Bank, which is why we took action alongside a number of other countries against some cabinet ministers of sanctions.
Yeah, the extreme right.
Yeah, who have been actively fomenting and perpetrating that. So focus on that immediate aspect in order to start to build.
He's not going to answer that.
And do you think President Trump, I know you said that you also...
Here we go. I told you, he's not going to answer that. He's not going to say it's a war crime. He's not going to say bombing the hospital and schools it's a war crime just to get few terrorists. It's ridiculous. Again, like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying who's good, who's bad guy right now. We all know Hezbollah is bad guy. We all know Hamas is bad guy. There's no arguing about that. But do you really need to bomb the hospital or school just to get few of them? Really? Do you really need to kill so many civilians? And the numbers over there are all over the place because they don't release it. Somewhere we hear 60,000 civilians, including kids. I think kids were like 13, 15,000 that died because of the Israel's bombing the place. Really? And you're not going to say, you're not even going to suggest that it might be a war crime? Seriously?
Signed this communique at the G7. But, President Trump, I think he's defined by uncertainty. We don't really know what he's going to say next. Do you think that he is really, in your private conversations or your conversations, is he committed to relieving this situation in the Middle East in a fair and just...
He's the only one who is committed. He's the only one who's trying to have a peaceful world. Like, really? Are we still gonna argue about it? What is he doing that shows that he's not committed to peace? Like, he has a peace talks with Israel, Palestine, Israel, Iran, Ukraine, Russia, and you're gonna tell me that President Trump is not committed to the peace? Really?
Best way.
Well, I think he has the potential to be decisive in the situation. He's used his influence and U.S. power in other situations. We've just seen it in Iran. And again, to repeat myself, it does create the possibility of moving forward here. And look, there is a moral imperative to move forward. There's also an imperative, as you intimated in a question earlier, about the pathway to ultimate peace. This is not going to lead to ultimate peace in the region unless Gaza is stabilized and then ultimately on a path towards a Palestinian state.
On that note, Prime Minister Carney, thank you for joining us.